Wow, we're live. Welcome to Podadelphia. My name is Dave Diorio. You can find me on Twitter at @fat_lobster. And I'm joined by two guys who have spent the last 6 hours trying to open a can of beans. What's up, Chuck and Gene?
Hey, Dave. Hey, Gene. I would have really laughed out loud if Gene hadn't spilled the beans before we started recording by accurately guessing what your intro would be. I do have to give it like 10 out of 10. That is a Dave Diorio classic intro. Dave Diorio classic intro. On a serious note, that's fucked up. I don't believe it happened. But I think that's a messed up thing to do to your kid. If you want to try to keep the show PG-13, that's a messed up kid's thing to do to your kid. But for nice things you can do for your kid, I hope you will follow me at Chuck Siders. I like to give parenting tips. That's not at all true. You can follow the show at Podadelphia.
And I'm Gene Selak. You can follow me at Producer Gene. And when I heard the story of Bean Dad, I just thought of like maybe the worst sitcom episode ever, where it was just 23 minutes of a 6-year-old slowly melting down with a can opener. I don't know what fat guy and attractive woman would be playing the mom and dad in that sitcom, but I don't know. I guess Kevin James will probably show up at some point. But also, you can find the show at Podadelphia if you haven't checked us out already.
Right. Thank you. Well, the internet is undefeated, and it did win in this case also. So.
I was going to say, you can tell Gene does not have kids because Gene thinks that a 6-year-old would take 6 hours to melt down. As the proud owner of a 6-year-old myself, if things go wrong past maybe 10 minutes, he is out. He is done. He would choose to starve as opposed to opening those beans.
Okay. I mean, we cannot delay this any longer. At the end of last week, I thought that we had put the Eagles to bed, and we're just going to get our Sundays back. We were going to be able to move on with our lives. I was going to be able to ignore this meaningless Sunday night football game, at least in terms of Philadelphia is concerned. And then Doug happened. Doug happens, what are you going to say? Like, sometimes just Doug happens. And like we tanked the game. We tanked the game at the end of the game, and it's basically caused an uproar in the city. Where do we even want to start? Let's just go on record now. Are you pro tanking this game, or are you morally opposed to tanking this game?
Oh, well, I'm going to start off with the least interesting answer and say that I fall somewhere in between. I'm not morally opposed to tanking.
A little bit of both. Didn't we have that conversation before? Like a little bit of both.
Yeah, we had that conversation before, and it was the execution of the tank that bothered me. I was watching bits and pieces of the game. By the time the actual, putting in of Sudfeld and the national outrage over the tank began, I was finishing up Karate Kid Season 3. And before revisiting the end of the game, it didn't bother me. It was like, all right, we made a plan. We were going to put Sudfeld in at some point. I guess it was going to be 3 quarters for Hertz and the last quarter for Sudfeld. Fine, whatever. And then when I saw people so upset, I went back and I watched that last quarter of the game. And it was the last play before Sudfeld came in. The decision to go for it on 4th as opposed to kicking the easy 3 to tie the game. And that's where it began not to sit right with me. It's sort of my feelings out of the moment, my feelings while watching Cobra Kai, it felt like a drunken mistake the longer it lingered. It was like, oh, it's fun. We tanked. So what? We tanked. We had nothing to earn. The game wasn't important. We could go up 6 spots. We tanked. We screwed over the Giants. Ha, ha, ha. Isn't this fun? And then when I saw the going for it on 4th as opposed to kicking the field goal to tie the game and then putting in Sudfeld that really felt a little scummy. It felt a little skeezy. It felt like, oh, I don't want to do it like this way. It seemed fun in the moment, but the more I thought about it, the worse I felt. I was no longer proud of it. So I would say, I forget the two examples that you gave, Dave, but I would say morally opposed to the execution of the tank.
Gene, go on record. Where do you stand?
I had said before the game started that I hoped that we lost, and there was no reason to win.
But that's a different question.
Yes, but I am opposed to tanking in the sense that once the game begins, you are not trying to win. In that sense of tanking, I'm opposed to that across the board. Like, you should, once the ball is tipped, once the coin is flipped, you should be trying to win the game. The Sixers tank was not about going into games and missing free throws to lose games. It was, you played players that were not NBA level players against NBA teams, and they got beat. But those players were trying, and that's why some of them have careers now. They're not stars, but they are out playing in the league. They were able to, at least the players were able to showcase that they were talented.
So do you believe that the Eagles should have gone into that game with the intent to lose it?
I think that if they were going to play Sudfeld at all, he should have started the game. I think that they should have just shelved any player that they felt could not be risked in the game. And then once the coin was flipped, then you do what you need to do to win it, which would include making smart decisions like kicking a field goal to tie. It's hard to lump that in with the tank situation, considering who Doug Peterson is. Like, that is a very Doug decision to not tie that game, especially if you look over the course of the whole season, which is also frustrating. But the decision to, if you are in that, why did Jalen Hurts even play is really my question, especially considering you healthy scratched Carson Wentz. I think if you're going to make up the lame excuse of, well, Sudfeld, we're going to, Sudfeld, we told him beforehand we were going to give him snaps. He should have had all the snaps, and you should have, played whatever group of receivers that you have no confidence will be back next year, and put Kelsey and Ertz on the bench too. But that's not what happened. So we end up looking like a bunch of incompetent nincompoops, frankly.
Well,
because we end up
What's your language, Gene?
We have to tank mid game, which is so stupid. Like, you're dumb.
Look, it's about to get colorful up in here because, look, you do not tank a football game, a National Football League football game. And you could say that I'm like old man with this or whatever. There's like the 40-year-old delineation, and I'm on the old man side of this. But you don't tank a football game. You don't intentionally lose a nationally televised football game against your a division rival on your home field in front of the entire country to hand them a division title on your field when you could have won the game. It wasn't like you were down 20 and then you just said, okay, well, let's pack it in. The fat lady is singing. You have an opportunity to tie the game. You have an opportunity to win the game. You're probably actually the better team at the end of the day. You have a young quarterback. You have these guys who have played all season long. Look, all tanks are not created equal. And Gene, you kind of talked about the Sixers a little bit. And this is like, if you're going to compare these two, you have no idea what you're talking about, or you're not really a fan of both or either sport, because it's apples and oranges, man. And the Sixers tank was an organizational decision it wasn't even a 1-year plan. It was like a 5-year plan. And these were the years we're going to tank. And then this is what we're going to try to do moving forward. This is, hey, we're trying to win a Super Bowl this year. And then, oh shit, it went south. And now for 3 draft slots, you're going to make an embarrassment of yourself on national television. And you didn't even come into the game with the concept of we're going to tank this game. It looks like the gears were shifted, or like Lori called down from the press box or whatever to say, "Hey, you gotta tank this thing." And then Doug had to change his whole mindset to. It looks so sloppy. But it's football, man. There's like too many injuries. There's too much like invested in the season. I don't know. It just is such a bad look.
Now, Dave, you said a couple times like you don't tank in football, and then you ended it with, there's too many injuries. Is that the main sticking point of like football is different than other sports because the integrity of the game, or there are too few games, or just injuries, or
it's just not in my opinion, it's just not worth it. Like there's no benefit to
for one game.
You're going to get the 6th pick now instead of the 9th pick, and you're just going to fuck up the 6th pick like you would have fucked up the 9th pick anyway. And look at all the great players in the NFL and where they were drafted and how many teams passed up on them. You don't need the 6th pick any more than you need the 9th pick. I mean, sure, if you're like, which one would you rather have? You would want the 6th pick, of course. But you look at these like great NFL quarterback, Hall of Fame quarterbacks that don't go in the 1st or 2nd round, and how many chances you have to strike gold later in the draft. I mean, you look at the Sixers right now. You don't need the number 1 pick. You can find value later if you're good at your job. The problem is the Eagles just aren't good at their job.
No, that's very true. That's very true. And then you talk about, Jeffrey Lurie calling down in the middle of the game or whatever. That's a huge question. I mean, there was a Inquirer article came out late last night. I saw it earlier this morning saying that like everyone was surprised. You had to hold back players on the defense from, getting in Doug's face about it. But then on the other hand, they say Jalen always knew that Sudfeld was going to go in at some point.
Yeah, I think Brandon Graham said that he knew all along too.
Yeah. I know I just saw a whole bunch of conflicting information. So it seems like they kind of knew, but I don't know. It definitely needed to be better communicated to the team. It should have been either tank the whole game, we're not risking any injuries, or I don't know. There was no crowd there, right? There was nobody there. No. So it's not even like, hey, Hurts, take your victory lap, take your bow. We'll see you next season. It might as well have been you get no more than a half. It was really the execution that bothered me about it. And especially when you could have tied the game. You could have made something worth playing for to screw over that rival in front of you, as opposed to the Giants sitting at home,
The other thing that had been sort of bantered around, and I don't know if this is something that came out of the press conferences between Howie and Doug on Monday, but there was talk that they treated it like a preseason game. Here's my problem with that. One of the things you're doing in a preseason game is you're evaluating your team to see what players you want to carry into the season. And if you really are treating this like a preseason game in the sense that you are going to be evaluating the talent that you have on the roster right now, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be doing that by trying to put your team in a position to lose. You should be actively trying to put players on the field that you want to be playing their hardest and their best so that you can see if they can be competitive for you next year, because Washington did have something to play for. So they were going to play hard on defense. They were going to play hard on offense. And what better way to see whether you have somebody talented than put them in a position in a game where, it's live tackling to see if they can make a play, which is why I sort of go back to if you really felt like you needed to see something from Nate Sudfeld, or that you had value in him as a player, or wanted to thank him for all of his years of being a great holder of the clipboard, then give him a start. Let him start an NFL game. Let him have had a week of practice with the ones. or whatever you're going to call the equivalent of the ones, so that he would have gone in there and at least been able to showcase his ability.
I can't even believe you're like seriously entertaining that pile of shit that was handed to you by Doug P. You ever hear someone say like, "Oh, always just tell the truth because it's the easiest thing to remember." Doug's not smart enough to spin these like lies. Like, what did he say? Like, Sudfeld's been here for 4 years, so he deserved a shot.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
What is that? Like, I don't. JJ Arcega-Whiteside's been here for 3 years. He deserves a catch.
He got one that game. He actually got a really good catch that game back, when I was watching it and cared about it. But also, he said, Nate didn't get any reps this year. You got to make sure he's not rusty for next August?
Can we go back to all of Doug's seasons and like show me like the last game of the season when he put the third string quarterback in to get him some reps and get a good look at him, or thank him for his time that he gave us this season or something?
It's the same guy. It was the same guy the whole time. It's always been Sudfeld.
Well, I mean, probably more seasons than not, Sudfeld did see time in there.
Yeah, sure. I just don't understand it. It's not even believable. It's not even believable bullshit. That's all.
Yeah, it's completely hollow bullshit, and it's something I'd always come up with, usually in a work capacity. I'm like, if you're going to lie to me better. Have enough self-respect to put some thought into this lie, to craft it well, to have an end goal in mind,
The other thing that I don't really understand is, and I mean, it's been alluded to that this might have been a call from the front office. I can't imagine that halfway through the game, Jeffrey Lurie was like, you know what? It's probably better for us to lose. I think if it was dictated from the top, like this would have been sort of a clearly defined mandate that it was, Doug, I'm going to need you to not win this game. I don't think that you would have heard Jim Schwartz come out there, and say stuff about like the hat nonsense and nobody's going to wear a hat, their championship hat on our field. A guy like that's not going to say anything if he knows that the team is not going to be competitive. Yeah. I can't imagine that if it was coming from the top down, that they wouldn't have shared it with a defensive coordinator. Although maybe for those of you that might be, the tinfoil hat type, or Cowboy Anon or whatever. Maybe your thought that he announces his retirement before the game is sort of his way of signaling to those in the know that the Eagles are going to be part of this. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like he was already out the door, literally. I don't know. I mean,
kind of respect that.
You can really sort of go down the conspiracy rabbit hole about what happened. But as they say with Occam's razor, usually the easiest explanation is probably the truest. And I just think Doug's an idiot. I honestly just think he's an idiot. There's so much evidence through this whole season that somehow by not having training camp or something, somebody like brain swapped him or something.
No, I don't believe that. I believe it was definitely the decision was made before the game. I wholeheartedly believe that the decision was made that we are not going to win this game. And I think instead of going in there with like a full on, we're tanking this game, we're going to start a third string quarterback, whatever. Instead of doing that, they decided to get cute with it and say, let's try and we may lose anyway. And then it got to a point where it was like, okay, we have a shot to win. We definitely don't want that to happen because my mandate was to lose. And so then, yes, Doug is an idiot and failed to do it with any sort of like panache.
There are so many examples of NFL head coaches that have tanked or, laid down for last games of the season, whether it's because they've already got the division lined up or whether it's because they're trying to get a better draft position. There's so many things how to do this better. And I don't know how you manage to screw this up. But honestly, one other thing I do want to talk about before we get too far off track. Can we talk about the reaction of the Giants, though? Can we at least say that maybe there's a little bit too much with we get it. You wanted to make the playoffs. You were 6-10.
No, you didn't. You didn't want to make the playoffs. Stop it. Stop it, Giants fans. You did not want to make the playoffs. You know you don't want to make the playoffs. You're going to lose. You're going to get destroyed in the first game. You're going to have the 20th draft pick. You know you didn't want to. You know you did not want to make the playoffs. Intellectually, you did not want to make the playoffs. Emotionally, you did want to win the division. I don't know. But in the back of your mind, you did not want to make the playoffs. So, I think it's a chance to be bitchy to Eagles fans right now, but I can't see them actually being mad. Seriously?
But don't you think it comes off as a little weak for their head coach to come out and be like, it's the most egregious thing I've ever seen in football and there's no respect for the game? Bro, you were 6-10. If there's one thing you could say is like, we did our job. We put ourselves in the best position we could have and things didn't go our way. That's what you should have been saying. That's what the Giants party line is. Should be. You shouldn't be indignant like you're an 11-win team that got screwed out of a playoff spot. You're as bad a football team as anybody else in the division. Nobody in the NFC East is a good football team right now. And everybody needs to sort of own that if you are in this division.
To me, the team that makes the playoff is the team that gets screwed. We screwed WFT, and they're the team that I'm like I have the least animosity towards right now.
They don't even have any idea how they're going to have a starting quarterback for an entire game in a playoff game. They're literally talking about doing like a quarterback rotation because they don't have a better option, because their actual starting quarterback, that was an actual like complete mess of a situation that's happened with that team. And they're the ones that are going to win the division. It's insane.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Yeah, I think the Giants outrage was more performative than anything. Sure, the players probably wanted to make the playoffs, and it was just fun to sort of needle the Eagles. But did you really want to be the answer to a trivia question? What team won their division with the pathetic 6-10 record? The 7-9 at least happened, I think, a couple of times before.
Yeah,
like
Seattle
did it first, and then I think another team have done it since.
I'm pretty sure it's happened.
Yeah.
I think it's a right that's mainly reserved for the NFC West. But I think the back to the New York thing, the Eli tweet was the most like hilarious thing.
Yeah,
right? Did he say something that's like, "This is why we hate Eagles" or something like that?
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. We hate the Eagles. This is why we hate Eagles. I don't know.
Yeah, I forget the exact thing, but it's like, this is why we hate Philadelphia, or this is why
I thought you hated them because you always lost to us. Like how many? Like every time. I don't know, last 10 years.
But I will give Eli credit there, because I think he is kind of playing a part, and
sure,
he plays up. You can tell he has affection for Philadelphia. He always said like, "Oh, I'd go there, and the 8-year-old kids are flipping me the bird, and grandmothers are cursing at me, or whatever." You could tell he actually does have affection.
Chuck, give me your Eli face. Give me a Manning face. All right, that's pretty good.
I never said I could do a Manning face. I mean,
Gene, give me your Manning face. I can't see. You got that. Okay, all right. Interesting.
All right, Dave.
I guess I'll do mine then. All right. Hold on. It's kind of like.
Oh yes,
I was missing the sadness. I had the slack jaw, vacant stare, but really the downturned eyes. For those of you who are listening to our regular podcast feed and wonder why we're wasting your time making faces, we are trying something new. We're streaming live on Facebook. Not Facebook. No, we're streaming live on YouTube. And this may become a recurring feature. We're testing it out. So if you hear the occasional thing that requires a
you can always go
joke
back. If you loved what you're hearing, you can listen to it with your eyes.
Yeah, visual humor
on YouTube. Just sort of
very provocative. Very provocative.
All right, let's talk about Monday's press conference.
Oh my God, we're still going on. All right.
But I think this is all like, are we doing anything other than bitching about this game on this episode?
We might.
I knew it was.
We might want to talk about the Sixers a little bit.
Okay, we can talk about
Okay, week.
maybe a little. I mean, Chuck, you're all fired up, man. We got to talk a little Flyers, I guess.
Yeah, I would have changed my wardrobe if I knew it was going to be like all Eagles all the time. I mean,
you guys are kind of like fingers on my hand. You're like my two middle fingers.
That's a good introduction. That should have been. You could have audible to that.
I could have. This press conference was an abomination from everybody involved. Howie, Doug, and every reporter that was in that room.
Yeah.
A complete embarrassment to their professions, insulting to us as fans, and it was just weak.
Yeah. I want to start in the reporters. You got to ask the questions. We've heard a lot, especially during, with the Trump White House. Like, oh well, why aren't you asking the press secretary people harder questions, or really, really, trying to nail them down on points? They go, well, they're not going to answer, or if they will answer, they're going to lie. But no, it's your job to ask the questions. That should have been a much
even
more.
If it's a lie, it's a lie, it's like get these sons of bitches on record.
Yeah,
with this stuff. Did you tank the game? How come no one asked that?
Nobody even.
Did you fucking lose that game on purpose last night?
Yeah, it's like they hadn't checked Twitter yet. You know what I mean?
Yes, Doug is going to say no. Okay, explain to me these actions.
Right.
And then you say, what professional coach who's trying to win a football game puts in his third string quarterback when they're tied, or when they're down by 3, whatever it was?
Who refused to bench his quarterback who started the season for poor play for about 6 weeks too late.
Doug, Carson Wentz says reports are out that Carson Wentz is saying that your relationship is unrepairable. Is this true?
Yeah.
Why would he say that? Why do you believe he's saying that?
Yeah, that should have been the most uncomfortable Eagles press conference that we've seen in recent memory. It should have been them taking them to task, because they're sitting there, both of them still having their jobs. I mean, we've talked about it on this show. It's not like the ending to this season came as a surprise. Right. We talked about many times of what's going to happen, what's going to be the fallout, who's going to be here, who's not. And now here we are on Black Monday, and everybody's still employed. And Carson Wentz is a part of the future.
Who's your starting quarterback next season?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't know yet? What's your preference?
Nate Sudfeld.
We got a good look. Got a good look last night, didn't you?
Yeah, it's
was this Zach Ertz's last game in an Eagle uniform?
Yeah, it's troubling.
Where are these questions?
Yeah, none of those came. And Doug still managed to somewhat get out, I guess, the party line for most of these questions, other than the Carson Wentz thing. But then most of the anger from the reporters was not about how poorly they they did their job. It was that Carson Wentz wasn't going to talk. I mean, first of all, he was a scratch for the game, so it's not like he was not obligated to speak, I guess would be the question. But what moping about it isn't going to do anything. I think that the slant should have been that you take his silence to mean something, and not just mope. Oh, he didn't want to talk to us. Well, yeah, I wouldn't want to talk to you either, and he's not obligated to, and he's talked to you an awful lot when he probably didn't want to. But if you can't read the tea leaves as to why Carson Wentz isn't having the interview, I feel like it's a very poor take to just be like, oh, well, he's not going to talk to us, and he really should. No, he wasn't obligated to, and you should be taking that for what it is. It's as loud a statement by him saying, I'm not going to come and speak to the media, as it would have been if he had come and said anything. Because if there's one thing we know about Carson Wentz, is when he gets in front of a microphone, he is very well versed in saying absolutely nothing.
I mean, you think Chris Mortensen makes this stuff up? That he's gonna demand a trade,
Yeah.
and that the relationship is so damaged that it's beyond repair. I mean, you think this stuff comes out of thin air? I mean, sure, you could write this stuff, but I mean, you can't report it unless you have some sort of evidence or someone on record that's validating it. I mean, I don't care if Carson Wentz talks or not. Like, whatever. He did a bad job and he got fired for it. I mean, he didn't get fired, but he got benched for it. Like, I'm not, whatever. It is what it is. It's these two that felt that, and, you know, Howie feels he deserved the contract, gave him the contract, whatever. Doug's supposedly getting the most out of the player as he can, so it doesn't sound like he's getting very much out of him, at least this season. You know, he's made poor decisions all year. But, I mean, again, going back to they're employed, they're definitely coming back next year. Carson, we don't know right now. But when you ask Howie about Carson, when you draft a guy, he's like a finger on your hand, and you can't imagine life without him. And, you know, all this happy horse shit. Oh, you know, there's guys in this building that have drafted future Eagle Pro Bowlers, future Eagle Hall of Famers.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't think any of those people are Pro Bowlers, though, if you look at who's been drafting lately.
Well, yeah, okay. You drafted future Eagle Hall of Famers. Well, other GMs drafted actual Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
So,
and some of them like directly after the guy that you drafted who had 4 catches on the year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know who he's talking about. You know, we were in the text. You know, who was drafted by this management group that will be a future Eagles Hall of Famer.
Did we have Brandon Graham as one?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Brandon Graham would be an Eagles Hall of Famer.
Well, I think he was like the very first year of Howie, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but Doug wasn't here. The only one I could think of off the top of my head, I don't know if we said this one, was maybe Miles Sanders, but you know,
way too early.
It's way too early.
He might be, but
I mean,
nice player, can't catch, but nice player.
He did make a Pro Bowl this year, so we'll see. But you know that Lane Johnson wasn't a Howie guy. You know who else? Can we even you know, Darius Slay was brought in.
I mean, Kelsey and Ertz.
Kelsey and Ertz, but you know, Ertz, it certainly doesn't seem like this relationship is ending on the happiest of terms right now.
But yeah, you're like your point. A lot of these players were free agents brought in. You know, like Jason Peters. You know, so I just don't see it, and I don't trust him with this draft, and I don't think it's worth losing the locker room, losing face with your fan base, losing integrity with the media, like national integrity. Like, I just don't think any of that was worth it over the 3 draft spots that you are going to screw the pooch with anyway.
And the thing is, when we're talking about the 6th and the 9th, I mean, one of the things that everybody always touts is how good Howie is at making moves, how great he is at swapping picks and making trades. You don't think you can move up 3 spots? You can't put up that package that if you really need to get your guy, you can't go up to the 6th pick? Because
maybe they will trade Wentz and they will eat the $30 million next year for the cap hit. And maybe all they're doing, and Lori's got a master plan, and what he's going to do is just keep these guys around. So when the shit really hits the fan next year, he has his fall guys. He's got his pound of flesh to give all of us when this really goes south. So why start fixing it now? Let's wait till it really hits rock bottom before we pull the plug on this bullshit administration.
Yeah, it's the secret tank. It's why are you keeping these people around?
It's all I have. It's all I can hold on to right now. It's my only glimmer of hope that we're going to get out of this, is that there is some sort of like a long-term strategy with the head coach and the GM that are just like failing. And you know, I tweeted it out the other day. Every week that Super Bowl is more and more and more of a miracle that it ever happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank God for Nick Foles and that Bud Light statue. It just captures the ridiculousness and the specialness of that Super Bowl. That's like, why are we building a statue now? And why did Nick Foles? And why is the beer company building it?
Dilly
And you
Dilly.
know what? Yep.
It all makes
What happened to Dilly Dilly? Where's Dilly Dilly?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Is it gone?
Who watches commercials anymore?
Exactly.
I mean, but yeah, it's. I would be perfectly content if we ended this show and found out that everybody's getting fired. Everybody, like nobody's coming back. Pick your favorite Eagle; they're gone, and we're bringing in a competent GM to burn it all down and build it back up.
Who's your favorite Eagle?
Who's my favorite Eagle? I don't know if they're on the team. Well, I mean, I don't think they'll be on the. I don't think I have a favorite Eagle who's going to be here next year. Ertz. I mean,
go with Alex Singleton.
You know what? I saw a lot out of Alex Singleton.
Yeah, he's good.
Sanders. There's something there. Boston Scott, if he can be like a tertiary weapon. He could be like, oh yeah, he's pretty decent. I don't even like Swoop. Like it's, yeah. I'm rooting for Jalen. I mean, I'm really rooting for Jalen Hurts.
Oh, I thought you were Mills.
Well, I do like his Green Goblin hair. If I don't think he even has that anymore. Yeah.
Gene, who's your favorite Eagle?
I like Darius Slay. I think he'll be back next year.
Yeah,
I like him as well. But I don't know if it's just because of the name.
Great name.
Yeah, it's a great name. His wife does some excellent PR. Gives away jerseys on Twitter. And he just seems like a nice guy and fairly, is pretty good at his job. Which, considering he's a member of the Eagle secondary. To be pretty good at your job it means you're probably actually spectacular at your job.
So where do we end this? Like what legendary NFL organization in your lifetime do you remember tanking a game like that? Like, could you imagine the Packers tanking a game?
No, God no.
The Steelers tanking a game?
Probably not.
I mean, come on.
Maybe
it's
pathetic.
Maybe so sad. Who are we?
The Raiders did.
Who are we? Like, what is our identity right now?
So how on a scale of 1 to like 4,000, how angry will you be if the Eagles trade out of the 6th position?
Like, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'll have to look at it. I don't know. I guess I'll be annoyed.
You get two number 2s and the 20th pick 3 years from now. That's
I don't know what the Eagles could do that would make me more irritated besides sending Wentz to the Cowboys.
Gabe Kapler never lost a game on purpose. and you know what? For that matter, neither has Brett Brown.
Well, I mean, he did sort of oversee the ship.
Like I said, look, I think Brett went out there and said, "I'm going to try to win every game I can."
And I think that was important to that Sixers squad. You
have to do that.
Yeah, it didn't perpetuate this culture of losing. I mean, they're talented. Their lack of ability to shoot the basketball competently did, but he really took the players who were there and said, we're going to play with some pride. We're going to play the fundamentals well. We're going to be a team with some self-respect. And to go from an epic tank, a historic tank, they trust the process. He was there for both parts of it. You never see that. And yeah, he didn't get the ultimate success that he could have with the team. They didn't go They didn't win the championship. They didn't go to the NBA Finals. But he shepherded the tank.
Well, he had his chance,
and he was adequate for a few years. He was there for the first couple years of Ben and the first couple years of Embiid, and handed the baton nicely to Doc Rivers.
I mean, he had Butler. I mean, he had Tobias. He had the team. He was in that game 7. He had his chance. I think the Sixers, did everything they could for him to give him that opportunity, and we don't owe him anything moving forward. And it's fine. We're in a much better place now.
Yeah. No, I wasn't saying that, but
no, I know you're not. I'm just saying, like, it's. I don't think we did Brett dirty.
Yeah.
Not that you're saying that we did.
He probably was here a year too long. And I think what we're seeing now this year is maybe, I don't know, Chuck, maybe you could talk about this in terms of hockey. It's the best maybe analogy I can draw between the two arena sports is sometimes it's not even so much you've lost the locker room so much as you just need a new message. You sort of need you need something to revive the chemistry. I know with basketball there is certainly a mindset. Even if you think back to sort of some of the other epic, more classic dynasty organizations, you had certain teams that turned coaches over in order to finally get over the hump. The Bulls had other coaches before they finally landed on Phil Jackson and went on sort of their epic run. So I think the Sixers hopefully have sort of found the right or a little maybe lucked into the right guy in the right time with Doc Rivers. He certainly seems to have been able to reinvigorate some of the players. It certainly helps that Joel Embiid has come in the best shape of his life. And maybe the best thing to talk about when you're talking about the Sixers is I think maybe we were sort of lulled into a sense of Tobias is super bad, and Doc Rivers does know how to use his skill set correctly and has sort of got him going. And I think Seth Curry is absolutely been a great pickup. And it shows you what really the problem with last year's Sixers is when people were sort of dropping in on Embiid, there was nobody for him to pass to that was going to knock down a shot. Now if teams are going to double or triple Embiid, somebody on this team is now able to hit that open shot. And they're doing it enough that you're seeing them put teams away so that you don't see Joe and Ben playing even in fourth quarters of games.
Remember, surround them with shooters. Instead, we got a bunch of like 8 foot tall dudes.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing that, and I'm surprised that this has sort of been this is one of the more surprising things to me, at least, is it seems to me that Dwight Howard is a really, really positive influence on this team. One of the things I've taken note of is, and this is not something that you would see in any other year, probably, or at least not have it be discussed in any other year. When the Sixers are finished playing, you will often see Ben Simmons, Dwight Howard, and some other combination of players. Sometimes it's Maxey, sometimes it's Thibault. They will be out and they will shoot for another half hour sometimes, or just they'll run the court. They'll just shoot foul shots. They come out and they stay on the court and stay sort of in that game mindset for sometimes a half an hour or 45 minutes after a game. Now, obviously, in a normal year when you've got fans in the stadium, the organization is selling like fan experiences where they can come down on the court and take pictures. So, the players have to sort of shuttle off the court. But it's interesting to me to see that sort of veteran leadership, to show that sort of work ethic, that to sort of continue to live in the moment of the game for as long as you can sort of live in it. And it's not something I had ever known about Dwight Howard. And I don't know if this is something that he's sort of brought into his game, is to sort of take on this sort of mentor role. But he seems like he's the anti-Al Horford in every sense of the word. He seems like he really likes being with the organization. It seems like him and Joel have a really good relationship. It seems like he's happy with his role on the team. And is sort of, thriving and really is the best backup center that Joel has ever had. And I think that what you're seeing is all of these factors working together to create a team that is currently the best team in the NBA record-wise at 6-1. And it's the best start they've had since 2001. We all know where the Sixers sort of ended up that season. And I think one of the things that, as we went into the season, a lot of people were like, well, they need to trade for Harden. We need to move Ben along. Right now, I don't know that I would do anything, at least that dramatic, with this team to shake up what's going on. I feel like much faster than any of the Brett Brown teams, you're seeing this Sixers team find an identity and play a brand of basketball that is both fun to watch and is winning basketball.
Well, and it's been against a lot of bad teams lately too.
Well, we're going to see what's what here coming up, because we have games against the Heat, we've got games against Brooklyn, we've got a game against the Clippers.
Yeah, we have the Wizards tomorrow, and
Wizards.
then today when you're listening to this, and then Nets, Nuggets, Hawks, and then Heat.
Yeah, so you've got some tough games coming. You're gonna have to see. I hope I don't see Joel Embiid sit any of these games. I'd like to see him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe if you're gonna sit any, I would sit him against the Wizards.
Is there a back-to-back in there anywhere? Because that would be where he would sit with.
There is not.
Okay, well that's good. If there's back-to-backs, there might be a chance that he plays them.
Well, yeah. There's the Wizards tomorrow, which is Wednesday, right?
Right.
And then the Nets are Thursday.
Okay. Well,
so maybe it would
sit against them. It would be odd to sit after you've been off, but it's going to be. We'll see. We'll see. And
they're sit against the Nets. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as load management goes, he hasn't been playing in fourth quarters for like the last 3 games. So
that's very true. That's very true.
Okay, and then he had a night off. So I would think that maybe you could sort of stretch him out. You have Dwight Howard. Maybe you don't have to play him, for 40 minutes against the Wizards. Maybe you can get away with playing him 33.
You know what's funny? The game that I'm actually most intrigued about in this whole run here is going to be Monday's game against the Hawks.
Yeah.
Because
it's in Atlanta, right?
It's in Atlanta, yeah, and that's a game that we struggle with usually.
Oh yeah.
Just one of those nasty guards, with Trae Young, and he always drops a ton on us. So it'll be interesting to see how this new look Sixers kind of matches up against a team that is not like dominant, but traditionally gives us fits.
So, having watched a couple of games now, what have you taken note of? What maybe has stood out to you? What do you think of maybe some of the new guys or some of the things that people are doing that sort of gets you excited to watch this team kind of go through the season?
I just think it's a lot more organized. It's just less of a mess now. I think we're getting good plays out of timeouts. The team's a little bit more disciplined. The spacing on the floor is better. The rotations make more sense. Plays out of timeouts. It just looks like, how you have a bad year at school or whatever, and you get your report card and it's not that great, and then you take summer off, and then, sometime in August, you go buy a new Trapper Keeper or get some new notebooks, and you open the pages and they're blank and they're crisp, and you go like, okay, this year I'm gonna do all my homework, or I'm going to study forever. I'm gonna do well this year. Like, that's where I think we're at with the Sixers. It's like it's September. In your school year, and we'll see as this starts to go, do they kind of fall back into a lot of turnovers and the chemistry is not there. So I mean, jury's still out with the Sixers. Obviously, I like what I'm seeing so far. I like the space, again, all the stuff. It seems like we're in a better place. I don't want to be like twice bitten.
Yeah,
with this stuff, because every year I'm like this with the Sixers. We were 8-1 last year to start the season. Like, let us not forget before everything fell apart.
And I'm the most casual of casual Sixers fans, but one thing I've enjoyed in the games I've watched so far this season is real consistency of, if not play, of at least effort. Or there doesn't seem to be points where I'm watching the game going, okay, what the hell just happened? Even if the opposing team goes on a 12-point run or whatever, it doesn't look like the Sixers forgot how to play basketball. Where in the past, I've watched games where it's like, oh, we are dominating, the Sixers look like an amazing team. And then it's like, and now we're just going to coast. Or, they're not hitting shots, they're not hustling back. Here, it looks like a good basketball team. It looks like, when the other team is scoring, when they are losing that momentum, it doesn't. And maybe it's a mental thing on me. I don't feel as worried. I don't feel they look as lost. I don't feel like, that's it. That's the game. We look good for half that first quarter, and then we blew it. And
yeah, that Toronto game was really telling with that, the way they battled back with that. And that was something that, I was like, oh, well, they would lose this game last season.
Yeah. I think it helps that they have sort of an infusion from the last two drafts. You see a guy like Thibault, you see a guy like Maxey come in, and not only are they, sort of full of energy and trying to prove something, but it seems like they were able to identify particular skill sets in both these players that have really been something that the team needed. So they're playing meaningful minutes, especially Thibault right now. But even Maxey is coming in and playing, 12 or 13 minutes in a night. So teams are already starting to have to plan for having to deal with his skill set. And
Maxey's nice. And this goes to back to Howie. You had the number one pick, and you took Markelle Fultz. You had the 21st pick in this draft?
Yeah.
And you got Tyrese Maxey. And now, which one's a better player?
Tyrese,
or who will be a better player?
you
know what I'm saying?
Certainly looks like Maxey is a better Sixer. If the kid in Orlando, if he ends up being a solid NBA player, God bless him. But it was never going to work out in Philadelphia after the way things started. So it's exciting to see a guy like Max. And there's been a couple guys that have come into the league as rookies that have sort of popped, but Maxey is right there with the other rookies as far as guys that have come in and contributed meaningful minutes early in the season. So that's exciting. And a lot of people were high on the pick, and it's really good to see. A lot of people had knocks on his ability to shoot, and he's looked like he's been able to knock down open jumpers. He really is a guy that can create his own offense, and he's pretty tenacious on D. So you get a guy like him, you get a guy like Thibault, who are just sort of pit bulls. Out on the court, like that can really be frustrating other teams to have to deal with these sorts of guys when they want to try to set up their offenses.
Right on. Tenacious D.
Tenacious D.
My favorite band that I haven't thought about in 10 years, I'd say.
Chuck, I did have a question about the Flyers. I don't know if we're going to talk much about them, but can you go over the position change gate or position change news that happened this week? Defender goes to left wing. Is that how I understand this?
Yeah, now's probably the week to go through it, because I think by this time next week, we're probably not going to be talking about it that much. Sam Moran, often injured, drafted early, big lanky dude. Is trying to save his career, more or less. He had 2 consecutive ACL issues, ACL tears, injuries, whatever, that required surgery. And the Flyers are just so deep at the defensive position, and defense, it's such a liability that it's a mistake on defense, it ends up in the back of your net, so it's not the kind of It's not the kind of position they go, hey, we want you to get a spot with the big club, and we're going to throw you in on the third pair D in a division, in a season where every game's a division game, and see what happens. If you did that, the leash would be incredibly short. He'd be on the taxi squad by the end of the first period. So, as an opportunity to get him a chance to play, they've moved him up to left wing. It also addresses a need for the Flyers, and they want some bigger body forwards. And say what you want about Moran, he's got a big body, and if they can get him, and that's a big if. We'll go back to why I don't think this is going to be too relevant, at least in the short term. But if they can get him active and get him active down low, think of the good old days of Chris Pronger on the power play. And Moran had a lot of comparisons to Pronger early, and everyone said, oh, you're only comparing him to Pronger because he's a big dude. And in this scenario, yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. Pronger used to camp out in front of the net on the power play, be hard to see around, and tip it in. Moran has a decent shot. He certainly can pass well, but it's low risk because he probably doesn't have a place on this Flyers team. High reward. If you can convert him to this offensive type of player that you don't have on the Flyers, he's an asset. I
feel like we're like wasting this slot, or we could have a skill.
I don't think we're wasting the slot. I don't think he's making the team. I mean,
okay, all right.
That's why I said let's talk about this week. This year they're having a taxi squad, a team that's going to practice sort of adjacent to the Flyers, but not really be on the Flyers. And I imagine this experiment will result with him being on the taxi squad, and maybe a favorable matchup comes up, maybe somebody needs a rest, throw him in as a fourth line winger and see what happens. I just don't see him showing the coaching staff and Chuck Fletcher enough in a preseason that's only one more week long. If you're listening to this on Wednesday, congratulations, you're a week away from Flyers hockey. And there's no preseason games. How much can you show in a scrimmage that's going to say, all right, you have hardly any NHL games under your belt, go play wing. Now, it's a lot easier to play wing than defense. I mean, that's just the truth of it. But I think it's a bit of an experiment. I'm happy to hear that the AHL is coming back on February 5th. That wasn't set at the time I first heard the Moran decision. So he could be on the taxi squad, maybe get some reps in here or there, but most likely go back to Lehigh and go, see what you got. We'll give you time on D. We'll give you time on left wing.
Do I care about this?
Should I care? You shouldn't. Well, you should, because if you like him as a human being, if you feel bad for the kid, this might be a chance. Well, this might be a chance for him to have an NHL career.
When did I become a bad guy?
I don't know. You said, "Why do I care?" And I'm saying, if you have affection for Sam Moran, if he's by all accounts a great human being, I've met him in passing, said hello. That was it. He seemed nice enough when he said hello. And I think the main thing as a Flyers fan you're rooting for is that he can be traded for a pick. And it's not going to be a high one. I personally hope that he has enough to play in the NHL for a few years. But I think it would be remarkable. It would be one of the stories of the year if Sam Moran is on this team as a winger in the bottom six, middle six, top line, whatever. if he finds a place on the Flyers as a winger this season, I think it's going to be the story of the year, where things have gone horribly, horribly wrong.
There's probably more likely that things have gone horribly, horribly wrong if we see a lot of ice time.
And also tweet me your negative Sam Moran stories. I'm happy to read them if you have any.
I guess the thing that was curious to me was that
I'm a famous Sam Moran hater. So
yeah, you didn't like him from like draft day 1.
Yeah.
So
when's Cam York coming up?
I don't know.
Cam York watch. Where's he at right now?
First intermission, USA versus Canada. USA is up by 1 goal.
Oh.
As usual, we crush them every year in this game.
Gold medal game.
Yeah,
we have won 3 in a row.
Screw you, Canada.
Damn
Probably have COVID under control, but
not as much as
win this hockey game.
But better than us.
It's every other country goes. At least we're not the United States.
Yeah.
I can't wait till we have actual hockey back. I can't believe we're like a week out. That's pretty exciting because I feel like hockey just ended. So,
you know what? We're like 2 seconds out of the penalty box.
I'm sorry, I stepped on your line. I thought you were being more interactive than usual. But I'll interact with you this evening. Dave, who is in your penalty box?
I have a trite and petty penalty box.
Those are the best. Those are my favorite.
And maybe you can explain this to me, why this is a thing. But what is going on with stores and restaurants and locking one side of the double doors? Why does this happen? I feel like an idiot every time I leave a store, particularly when I have like my hands full of takeout and I go back and I just crash right into the locked one side of the door. Is this to control the flow of humans all to one side? Is it a weather thing? Like, is it like we can't have both doors open at the same time? We'll create some sort of vortex, wind vortex inside the Chipotle. I mean, you would think with COVID, we want more space. Like okay, I don't want to have to hold a door for. I want 2 doors to be able to go in, and maybe they could say this one goes in, this one goes. I don't know what it is, but why is one door? This phenomenon happens all the time. Is it the person who opens forgets to flip the latch? Why? Please open both. Like, you have 2 doors. Use them both. Why use you paid for 2 doors? You're only getting the value of one. What if you only wanted 1 door? You should just bought the 1 door. I don't understand it. Please open both doors. I don't know. Small restaurant owners and local businesses, please just unlock all the doors that you have to enter the building and exit the building. It would help me greatly. Thank you.
I think we should really investigate the revolving door again. I feel like that's something that we should.
People get trapped in those all the time, though. I always enjoyed it as a kid, but apparently people do get trapped in them.
Well,
that's just me with my heel.
All right. So, small business owners, the country appreciates you, but not Dave. Unlock both doors. You're asking for a lawsuit. Small business owners, 2 minutes for a 2-door inconvenience. All right, Gene, who is in your penalty box this evening?
In my penalty box is unnamed Eastern Conference NBA executive who was interviewed. And this is a story that sort of made its way around. I think ESPN had it amongst other places, but the unnamed Eastern Conference NBA executive compared James Harden to Allen Iverson, but not in a positive way. Basically, the Eastern Conference executive was saying James Harden will be very difficult to trade because he is the type of player, much like Allen Iverson, who is incapable of being a good teammate. And when he is not the sole focus of the offense and able to rack up huge statistics, he's not going to be happy, and he's not going to be productive. And they illustrate the point by talking about how Allen Iverson played with the Sixers. My counterpoint to that is probably the best player that was ever paired with Allen Iverson in his entire 10-year run with the Sixers was Chris Webber in 2005. And if anybody remembers what Chris Webber looked like in 2005, you know that's not really saying much. But here's my point. Yeah, Allen Iverson was a selfish player because he literally had to be. Did he probably carry that 2001 team on his back all the way to the finals? Yeah, he did. And he's also a barely 6-foot guard who double crossovered Michael Jordan. So, and then stepped over Tyronn Lue. So, yeah, he was pretty freaking great, and he's in the Hall of Fame. James Harden has had other players that have been with him in Houston. Has he gotten along with them? Reports are sort of mixed on that. But I will say this. James Harden has put up huge numbers and won an MVP, has not been to the finals. So, Allen Iverson's Sixers were the only team to even bloody the nose of that Lakers dynasty in the early 2000s. They basically ripped through every other Eastern Conference team, win 4 straight wins, except for the Sixers, who famously won Game 1 out in Los Angeles. So, unnamed Eastern Conference executive, keep Allen Iverson's name out your mouth. Thank you.
All right. Unnamed Eastern Conference executive. We can't hear your name, and we can't hear the dog whistle that is the racism of comparing a player to Allen Iverson, saying Allen Iverson is a lazy player playing off 20-year-old stereotypes and tropes to badmouth a current player. You may not think we are picking up what you're putting down, but we are. To me, that's a clear as day comparison. You're getting a 10-minute game misconduct for trying to get racism through and thinking we wouldn't know.
And we're not talking about practice.
Obligatory. Chuck, who is in your penalty box?
All right. So Chuck's penalty box this evening is being sponsored by UPS. When you need to box it or ship it, you want to put it in a box by UPS. I am being sponsored by Ground Chuck.
With the brown penalty box. I didn't know that.
What's what?
The brown penalty box.
Yeah. You know, what can Brown do for you? You can brown up some Ground Chuck, who's sponsoring me. The Human Genome Project is sponsoring our good friend Gene over there. And everyone's favorite cookie, yes, we're talking about Hydrox, are sponsoring Dave DiOrio. If you haven't heard, the NHL has offered up anything and everything for your endorsement. It started with the helmets, and the helmets they're okay. They're not bad. Some of the logos are very large on the helmets, but most of them are not terribly offensive. But today, in a unique move that I think is going to be precedent-setting, for this season only, air quotes for the people who can't see them, for this season only, the NHL is allowing sponsors for the divisions, and they've done it in the most awkward way possible. They are keeping the title of the divisions. They've inserted the NHL in there, and then they have the sponsor. So we have the Scotia NHL North Division.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
The Honda NHL West Division.
I don't get that.
The Discover NHL Central Division. And the most offensive, the Mass Mutual NHL Eastern Division. Why
these assholes?
Yeah, these assholes dominate everything. But why not just have it be the Boston Bruins present the Eastern Division? You know. So,
like, all right, well, hold on, Comcast, where are you?
Well, Comcast, I don't know. Maybe the NHL wants to separate them a little bit. They own a very prominent team. They own the network all the games are shown on. So Actually, I would screw that. They already have a relationship. Why can't we have it be, the Comcast NHL East, the Xfinity NHL Central, the X1 NHL
You're
West?
reading my mind with that.
And I can't think of another. X-Fi? Is that like their mobile? Yeah, the X-Fi North.
Yeah.
No, screw it. Rogers. All the Americans are Comcast. Canadians could be Rogers. So the Pepsi Presents NHL. You are getting a 2-minute minor presented by the coal industry. 2-minute minor for farming out everything and everything.
All right, that is all the time we have for this week. We are going to be back with you next week. We're going to be talking on the eve of Flyers hockey. That is super exciting. We'll have more Sixers and hopefully no more Eagles talk. It'll be a super boring week for the Eagles. So if you haven't done so already, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, check us out on social media: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search Podadelphia. If you have any more time in your podcast listening week, be sure to check out the Whip Around for all the week's weird news. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of weird news coming out of this week. Until we speak again, have a great day at work, everybody. We are out of here.